It is the year 1863. Robert Lee's Confederate Army of Northern Virginia had scored a smashing victory over the Army of the Potomac at Chancellorsville. Brimming with confidence, Lee decided to go on the offensive and invade the North for a second time. In addition to bringing the conflict out of Virginia and diverting Northern troops from Vicksburg, where the Confederates were under siege, Lee hoped to gain recognition of the Confederacy by Britain and France. On the Union side, President Abraham Lincoln had lost confidence in the Army of the Potomac's commander Joseph Hooker, who seemed reluctant to confront Lee's army after the defeat of Chancellorsville. On June 28, Lincoln named Major General George Gordon Meade to succeed Hooker. Meade immediately ordered the pursuit of Lee's army of 75,000, which by then had crossed the Potomac River into Maryland and marched on into southern Pennsylvania. Upon learning that the Army of the Potomac was on its way, Lee planned to assemble his army in the prosperous crossroads town of Gettysburg, 35 miles southwest of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. One of the Confederate divisions in A.P. Hill's command approached the town in search of supplies early on July 1, only to find that 2 Union cavalry brigades had arrived the previous day. As the bulk of both armies headed towards Gettysburg, Confederate forces led by Hill and Richard Ewell were able to drive the outnumbered Federal defenders back through town to Cemetery Hill, located a half mile to the south. Seeking to press his advantage before more Union troops could arrive, Lee gave discretionary orders to attack Cemetery Hill to Ewell, who had taken command of the Army of Northern Virginia's 2nd Corps, after Lee's most trusted general, Thomas J. Stonewall Jackson, was mortally wounded at Chancellorsville. Ewell declined the orders to attack, considering the Federal position too strong. His reticence would earn him many unfavorable comparisons to the Great Stonewall. By dusk, a Union corps under Winfield Scott Hancock had arrived and extended the defensive line along Cemetery Ridge to the hill known as Little Round Top. 3 more Union corps arrived overnight to strengthen its defenses. As the next day dawned, the Union Army had established strong positions from Culp's Hill to Cemetery Ridge. Lee assessed his enemy's positions and determined, against the advice of his defensively minded second-in-command, James Longstreet, to attack the Federals where they stood. He ordered Longstreet to lead an attack on the Union's left, while Ewell's corps would strike the right, near Culp's Hill. Though his orders were to attack as early in the day as possible, Longstreet didn't get his men into position until 4 p.m. when they opened fire on the Union Corps commanded by Daniel Sickles. Over the next several hours, bloody fighting raged along Sickles' line, which stretched from the nest of boulders known as Devil's Den into a peach orchard, as well as in a nearby wheat field and on the slopes of Little Round Top. Thanks to fierce fighting by one main regiment, the Federals were able to hold Little Round Top, but lost the orchard, field, and Devil's Den. Sickles himself was seriously wounded. Ewell's men had advanced on the Union forces at Culp's Hill and East Cemetery Hill in coordination with Longstreet's 4 p.m. attack, but Union forces had stalled their attack by dusk. Both armies suffered extremely heavy losses on July the 2nd, with 9,000 or more casualties on each side. The combined casualty total from 2 days of fighting came to nearly 35,000, the largest 2-day toll of the war. His hopes of a victorious invasion of the North dashed. Lee waited for a Union counterattack on July the 4th, but it never came. That night, in heavy rain, the Confederate general withdrew his decimated army towards Virginia. The Union had won the Battle of Gettysburg, though the cautious Meade would be criticized for not pursuing the enemy after Gettysburg. The battle was a crushing defeat for the Confederacy. Union casualties in the battle numbered 23,000, while the Confederates had lost 28,000 men, more than a third of Lee's army. The North rejoiced, while the South mourned, and its hopes for foreign recognition of the Confederacy was erased. Demoralized by the defeat at Gettysburg, Lee offered his resignation to President Jefferson Davis, but was refused. Though the great Confederate general would go on to win other victories, the Battle of Gettysburg, combined with the victory at Vicksburg also on July the 4th, irrevocably turned the tide of the Civil War in the Union's favor. On November 19, 1863, President Abraham Lincoln delivered his most famous speech at the dedication of the National Cemetery at Gettysburg. His now iconic Gettysburg Address eloquently transformed the Union's cause into a struggle for liberty and equality. In only 272 words, he ended with the following.
Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation or any nation so conceived and so dedicated can long endure. We are met on the great battlefield of that war. We've come to dedicate a portion of that field as the final resting place for those who here gave their lives that that nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate. We cannot consecrate. We cannot handle this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here, have consecrated it far above our poor power to add or detract. The world will little know nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. It is for us, the living rather, to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause, for which they gave the last full measure of devotion. That we here, highly resolved that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and the government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth.
Thank you for watching. If you liked the video, be sure to click that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click the bell to be notified about our latest videos.